Well, we are in the sixth and final part of this series, Brave, and I want us to go all the way back to the very beginning where we started. You see, we started looking at the circles of all of our relationships, and here's the thing. Like, you're at the center of yours, and I'm at the center of mine, but one of the things I encouraged all of us to do was, well, not to focus in on the people on the very outside of, the circle, that we need to focus in on, shining the spotlight in on, hone in on those, closest to us. Why? Because those closest to us those relationships have given us so much joy and happiness. Those people closest to us, right, it's where we experience love in such a deep way. Those are closest to us, right? We've had so many incredible moments. And those closest to us, that's where the real hurt comes from, the real pain, the real divide. And it's in those moments of the hurt and the pain and the divide that we have to be brave. We have to have unyielding courage in the face of unimaginable pain. And over the last 5-6 weeks, I've had so many conversations and messages from people as you have been processing through how to be brave in a relationship that's created so much hurt, so much pain. How to be brave when the divide is that wide. I've tried to give some very specific actions to help all of us navigate through that relational hurt, that relational pain. But I wanted to pause before we just bring this whole series to an end and just share some bonus content, some bonus wisdom, some bonus insights that will again have surfaced over the past 5 to 6 weeks. Now, where we started was we looked at kind of that first divide relationally where so much pain and hurt comes from. We started with, the B of the word brave, betrayal. And betrayal is the absolute obliteration of trust. I mean, that's at the epicenter of betrayal. And that's why as we focus in on those inner circles, those people that we just have trusted implicitly and who we feel like have trusted us, right? That trust is the foundation of all relationships. When that trust completely gets obliterated, that's where so much of the pain comes from. And so many times, we focus on the wrong thing. You see, here's the bonus insight. Don't focus on what the person did. Focus on the broken trust. So many times when someone breaks our trust, we focus in on the action that actually breaks our trust. They cheated on me. They lied on me. They stole and whatever that action is on the surface. And I'm not saying ignore it. I'm just saying don't focus on the what. Quickly get to the reality that action, what they said, what they did, that broke trust. And I want you to move quickly past the what into the reality that they completely shattered trust with you. Again, trust is the foundation of every relationship. And that's why so many times people just stay on the surface and they never get to the healing that must come. And here's the thing, if you don't heal from broken trust being shattered, that will impact every relationship you have. In fact, when you're living with shattered trust that has never been healed, you will emotionally and mentally just keep people at arm's length. And then you'll find yourself living isolated and living alone. So face with courage, face with bravery the fact that someone has obliterated trust with you. And then go on a journey with God and with a trusted friend or two. A healing journey to start putting those pieces back together again. Well, the R in the word brave is a word resentment. And resentment always gets tethered to those moments where you just scream, that's not fair. It's that moment where you do the right thing and it doesn't turn out right. And if we don't recognize the fact, resentment will creep in and it will connect not just in that relational divide, but it will start will spread out into every facet of our lives. And we'll start living with this wound that's not healing. And all of a sudden now our work and our friendship relationships and our hobbies and our church relationships, all of that now is getting, scarred by the fact that we did everything right, but it didn't turn out right. So one bonus insight that I just want to share with you is this. Don't allow yourself to get stuck in the cycle. Remember, betrayal is like a sledgehammer. It hits against your forehead. Resentment is this gentle whisper, the drip, drip, drip. It just is kind of in the shadows, constantly talking to us. And that's why this is so important to recognize. The drip, 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 the whisper in the shadows of our lives becomes this cycle. And then resentment just gets connected everywhere. And you just think everyone is out to get you and that life isn't fair and that you can never do anything right. And all of a sudden, all of that negative self-talk starts to enter into the space. And there you are stuck in the cycle. And you just got to call it out and refuse to be stuck in the cycle. Well, the A in the word brave is abandoned. And Joseph had just done everything right. And he gets thrown into prison where he finds himself now locked up as a slave. The cupbearer also abandons him, forgets about him. And, Joseph had to wonder, God, where are you? Because remember, what happens in our relationships down here on this earth also can so easily get connected to our relationship with God. We just got to recognize that. We got to call that out. And we got to be so intentional not to allow that to happen. And that's why when someone abandons us here on this earth, it's easy to think God has also abandoned us. I shared that week 3 actions to help us lead ourselves through a season of abandonment. I shared that God sees us, God guides us, and that God heals. In fact, attached to God heals, I encourage all of us to step through our hurt into someone else's hurt. That something healing happens. Not that we can heal another person, we can't. But we can be part of their healing journey. And when we choose to step through our hurt into someone else's hurt, guess what? God does something. And this is one of those spiritual insights. God does something within us to start healing us as well. Now, here's a bonus insight. You won't want to. Hear me. You won't want. In fact, if you listen to this message when we walk through the A, abandoned, and I share this with you, I'm sure that some of you, if not all of you, thought within you, like, I don't know about that. In fact, you probably quickly moved on to the next insight that you won't feel like it. But remember the feelings, right? Deceive us all the time. It's so easy to listen to our feelings, but just because you feel it doesn't make it real. And you won't feel like it, I promise you. And you will have an impressive list of reasons why you won't want to step through your hurt into someone else's life. It will be impressive. I mean, you should maybe write it down, put it in a book, and sell it. It will be that impressive. Of all the reasons why it's not the right timing, spiritually you're not there yet, God hasn't told you to, that person doesn't, all right, you will have an impressive list, and you'll convince yourself not to. But what I want you to hear is that's exactly what God wants you to do. We watched it over and over again in the story of Joseph. Him stepping through his hurt, him stepping through his pain, him stepping through it all into someone else's life. And God continued to show up and show off. A week ago, we had Man Camp, and it was an incredible just gathering of men, creating space for us to camp out, eat some great food, and just be intentional with relationships. And us guys need to do such a better job of being intentional in relationships. But leading up to man camp, I just want to be very honest with you. I didn't want to go. Relationally, it's been one of the most insane 6-8 months of my entire life, and it has only gotten more and more intense as the weeks have gone by. And I remember looking at my wife, Kim, and I said, Kim, I just don't want to go. And she just kind of gave me that look and she said, but you're going. And I found myself, do you remember back in junior high where you had the test the next day and you're trying to figure out how you could wake up and actually be sick? Or at least convince your mom and dad that you were sick so you didn't have to go to school to take the test. That's what, the night before man camp, I was literally at home going, well, Kim's sick, and she literally was sick, and I literally was like, trying to breathe her air to try to get sick. But if you've ever heard me say that I have superior genes, I do have superior genes. I never get sick. Well, once a year I get sick. Anyway, but I was like, okay, what if I breathe her air? What if I can get sick? I went to bed that night praying that I would get sick. I woke up the next morning not sick. I reluctantly packed all my stuff, got in my truck, started to drive to man camp. And along the way, I literally was thinking to myself, man, it'd be great if my engine blew up or a tire went off my truck, not to crash and die, but just so I couldn't be there. And then all of a sudden God said, Chris, what did you say to everyone? God was like, Chris, you shared with everyone that you need to step through your hurt into someone else's hurt. What are you doing? And then I said to God, well, God, just because I said it to everyone doesn't mean I have to live it out. The entire 3-hour drive, I kept on trying to figure out a way of not showing up. And God kept on reminding me that, Chris, you need to step through your hurt into someone else's. I got there that night, set up my tent. No, I didn't have a camper. Why? Because I'm a real Pennsylvania man. I slept in a tent. I set up my tent, got my sleeping bag out, and I sat around the entire night, a campfire with a group of guys. Laughed, ate great food, got to know some new people. And I crawled into my tent that night, and God just said, exactly, Chris, this is exactly what you need. The next morning, I got up, hung out with a group of guys, and there was 3 other guys and me that were going to go play golf. So we made the drive. We played golf all day. It was a beautiful day. And I got back in the truck to head back to our campsite from playing golf. And this is what I text my wife. Seriously, fun day golfing. My soul needed that. Grateful. And Kim, my wife, quickly responded. She said, I love when God answers prayers. I've been asking all day. Well, kind of begging and most definitely over-promising God things he already knows I will fail at. But still, yes. And then I just ended by saying, well, it worked. I'm so glad I stepped through my hurt into the lives of other people that just poured life back into me. Well, then there's the V in the word brave, and the word V is vengeance. And the reality, and we just know this to be true, that getting back will always get you back. The getting even is never even. And what we saw Joseph do not once, not twice, but 3 times in the story last week, he weeps 3 different times. And I tell you, that has really captivated me because so many times we hold all of that emotion inside and it will always come out. It's just a matter of how is it going to come out. And when we hold it in, it will come out in rage and anger. And we see Joseph weep. And so this comes to the bonus insight. You got to express out loud what is raging inside. You got to express out loud what's going on inside. And maybe it's crying. Maybe it's weeping. And yes, men, us men should weep. but maybe it's scripting it out. Maybe it's writing it out. I found myself sitting at Starbucks Monday night late and just writing out a whole bunch of what's going on inside of me, just getting it out, having a conversation with God, wrestling with myself, wrestling with my feelings, wrestling with all of it. I just kept writing that. You got to get what's on the inside out of you. Maybe for you, you just need to scream at God for a while. He has big shoulders. Maybe you need to sit down with a trusted friend and just say, hey, this is what I'm processing. Get some good spiritual wisdom and insight. I don't know what it is. But what's going on the inside, you got to get out on the outside. You got to. You got to. Well, all of that leads to the final letter in the word brave. It's the E word. And this is where we're going to end the series on the E in the word brave. And maybe you've been wondering what that word is. I'm not going to reveal it yet, but I will give you a little hint. Let me give you one letter, and this might help you out. Are you ready for it? There you go. I just gave you the letter E. There you go. Hopefully that helps. Well, where we paused the story of Joseph last week in part 5 of this series, this is what Joseph had said. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. I mean, this was the moment where all of a sudden Joseph reveals to his brothers, because they didn't realize who he was, because Joseph had lived in Egypt a very long time. He finally reveals himself to his brothers who had betrayed him, who had sold him into slavery. And Joseph goes on, he goes, for 2 years now there's been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and save lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all of Egypt. I love this moment because Joseph is just clarifying for his brothers that he got to the number 2 most powerful position of all the world, not because of them and not because of them selling them into slavery. No. This is all gets attached to a good God who is doing his good work. You see, there's a tension. There's a tension that we've seen across this entire story of Joseph. In fact, we see this tension over and over again throughout all the stories in the Bible, and we have personally experienced this tension. The tension is between what God causes and what God allows. Have you ever wondered that? God, did you allow this bad thing to happen to me? Did you cause it? And where do we answer it? Especially as we wrestle around with God's sovereignty. Over and over again, I have shared that there's divine sovereignty and human responsibility. Again, what we see throughout the storyline of the Bible, that God's going to do what God's going to do, and he has allowed us human beings to do what we're going to do. And there's this tension between the two. What does God just allow to happen? He kind of sits back and says, do whatever you want. And how much does God actually physically cause to happen? I think this is a good conversation that can't be answered this side of heaven. One day, we'll all sit down with God and we're like, okay, God, what say you? But I think at that point when we're actually sitting with God, we'll understand what divine sovereignty actually looks like. So here's my encouragement for you. Not that you don't try to wrestle through this, just don't stay here long. Quickly move and just ask this question. This is a game changer on your spiritual journey. Ask this question. God, what good are you going to do through this bad? Spend the vast majority of your time, your energy, not trying to figure out, did God cause it, did it allow it? No, okay, God, it's happened. So God, what good? Start there. Say, God, okay, the bad has happened. I'm going to start looking for your good. The bad has happened, and I feel the pain, I feel the hurt, I see the divide. All of that's real. It doesn't dismiss any of it. But God, I'm going to choose to start looking for what good is going to happen through my hurt, through my pain. Ask that question. And watch how you personally will start to heal. And watch spiritually as God starts working for his good. And then Joseph looks at his brothers and says, now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all of Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. Well, the brothers go home, and could you imagine Jacob's face when he hears that Joseph is not just alive, that he is now the number 2 most powerful person in the world. So Jacob gathers up everything he owns that he can travel with, and we're told that Israel, which is another name for Jacob, Jacob set out with all that was his. And when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices. He worshiped God. He had a moment to honor God, to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel, to Jacob, in a vision at night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob replies, here I am. Could you imagine being woken up to God's voice? And God says, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt. Now let's pause there for a moment. There's moments like this that causes me to pause and just to start to think, why out of everything that God could have said to Jacob in that moment, why did he say, hey, don't be afraid to go down to Egypt? Why did he say that? I started thinking about that, and all of a sudden, I go back to Genesis chapter 26. In Genesis chapter 26, God literally says to Isaac, Jacob's dad, he says to Isaac, don't go to Egypt. Don't go. And I just wonder, I'm just filling in some lines of the story. I just wonder if when Jacob was worshiping God and offering sacrifices to God, I wonder if he was having a conversation with God saying, hey, God, I remember when you told my dad not to go to Egypt, but yet Joseph is summoning me to Egypt, but yet I know you've said already, don't go to Egypt. I think that's why God shows up, because Jacob had to be in a little bit of conflict going, I know what you said to dad, but my son who's alive is asking me to come. What should I do? And God says and makes it so clear, hey, Jacob, now is your time to go to Egypt. It wasn't your dad's time, but now it's your time. And he gives the why. He goes, why? Because I'm going to make you into a great nation. Hey, Jacob, it's right to have a caution there. But now I am ready to do something through you and through your family. And I will go down to Egypt with you, Jacob. Right? God guides. He is walking with us. And I will surely bring you back again, and Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. Hey, Jacob, this is where you are going to die. So Jacob makes it to Egypt. Years pass by, and Jacob, dad, finally passes away. When the brothers hear that dad had passed away, they started to talk to themselves, and they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? Can you imagine? I mean, years have clicked by, and they're still holding on to all of this guilt, just assuming that Joseph is going to enact his vengeance. So the brothers sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions. They attached it right to dad. They're like, hey, this is what dad said. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they've committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of God, of your father. And when their message came to him, what does Joseph do? He weeps yet again. His heart just breaks. I think it breaks for the fact that his dad has died. It breaks because his brothers continue to think that he's going to enact vengeance on them. His heart breaks because they're still living in guilt. His heart breaks for the entire hurt and pain that has caused so much divide over the years. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We're your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" He's like, hey, I'm standing with God. God has guided me every step along the way. Through the betrayal and the resentment and the abandonment and the feelings of vengeance, God has guided me every step along the way. Am I not in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children, and be reassured them. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. And so Joseph stayed in Egypt along with his father's family, and he lived 110 years. You see, I think about this journey we've been on. I think about the betrayal of Joseph from those in the closest of circles relationally to him. I think about him fighting off the resentment when he did the right thing, ran out of the house, avoided Potiphar's wife, and he still landed in jail. I think about the feelings of abandonment he had to experience now as a prisoner, as a slave, and then the cupbearer forgetting about him for 2 years. I think about the moment where he saw his brothers, as Joseph was the second most powerful person in the world, and he could have enacted his revenge, his vengeance. He had all the power, all the influence, the position, the control. Yet he chose not to. And now we come to the letter E. Back in July, I was on my study break, and I was writing this series. And I remember when I started to write this series, I didn't have a title for it yet. I knew we were going to go and navigate through some relationship wisdom. I knew that. I'd landed on the story of Joseph, and I'd read through the story several times, but I hadn't landed on the word brave. And so I started to write the content. I probably got a good 30 to 40 pages into writing content, and all of a sudden I kind of looked back and I was like, wait a minute. The B in brave is betrayal. That fits the storyline easily. And then quickly I got to the story about Joseph and Potiphar's wife, and I'm like, he had to feel resentment because he did everything right and it didn't turn out right, and kind of got excited. I'm like, he's in prison, and the cupbearer forgets him, right? Abandoned, and I wrote abandoned down. I'm like, oh, this is going to work. I got really excited. I got to the V. I'm like, oh, this is the easiest one, vengeance, right? He could have enacted his vengeance, and he didn't. I got more excited, but then I got to E. And I started writing down the E words, and I had a great list of E words. Many of you have sent me your ideas or your thoughts of what you think E could be. And I remember looking at these great E words, and I remember sitting on my back deck going, yeah, none of it. This isn't it. And it's a hard thing to kind of explain, but I'm just telling you, none of it was it. I came to this place where I was like, Chris, if you can't land the right E word, you're going to have to scrap this whole idea of the word brave. Like, I'm not going to force something to happen. Well, early on in scripting this series, Brave, I usually try to get to the series graphic because I think creatively, because creatively it helps me to see it and to feel it and to experience the series. And so usually early on, especially when I get the name of the series, I'll start working on the series graphic so I could. And I remember early on, I had grabbed this image, And I hated the image. I grabbed it. Well, it was this image. And I remember grabbing it because I felt like, well, it's not that I hated the image. I felt like a cop-out. Like, that's too easy. Chris, like, it's Joseph in Egypt, so grab a picture of pyramids. And I remember, like, I literally put this in my what I use to, it's an Adobe, anyway, what I use to create graphics. I remember putting it in there, and I was like, Chris, this is too easy. You're a cop-out. So I left it because I couldn't figure out what this graphic needed to look like. Days later, I'm talking days and days later, I found myself sitting there trying to figure out the E, and all of a sudden God goes, hey, Chris, why don't you open up Adobe Photoshop and open up your file? I'm like, no, it's a stupid image. I hate it. I'm not going to have pyramids in this graphic. And but I clicked it. It opened up. I saw this. I was like, no, that's stupid. And all of a sudden, it was like God just slapped me. I mean, gently. I mean, it was a left. I mean, he just was like, Chris, you know what the E word is. And he whispered, it's Egypt. It's Egypt. I felt myself sitting there literally the shivers going up and down my body. I started to think through what Egypt means across the storyline of the Bible. Started thinking through God saying to Isaac, don't go to Egypt, Isaac, and then saying to Jacob, now is the time to go. One moment, Egypt was off limits for Isaac, but then for Jacob, God was like, no, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I think for Joseph, Egypt at first was a place of slavery, oppression, battling through betrayal and resentment and abandonment. And then all of a sudden God goes, hey, Joseph, remember the dream where all of a sudden your brothers and your dad, they're all going to be bowing down to you. You're going to be in a position of leadership. And all of a sudden God reveals to Joseph that Egypt was a place of so much hurt and pain and a place of healing and watching God do what only God can do. Egypt, a place where the 12 tribes grew into this mighty nation, and all of a sudden they found themselves enslaved. And then all of a sudden one day, a reluctant leader named Moses shows up, and God uses Moses and Aaron and Miriam to lead his people out of captivity towards the promised land. Egypt, a place of oppression, of slavery, and God's power on display. Egypt, the place where Mary and Joseph grabs Jesus and they flee for their lives to Egypt, a place of protection and a place where God said, hey, now it's time to go back. Go back to the place where Jesus is going to die. Egypt is a picture of all of our lives. The good and the not so good. Seasons of joy and seasons of pain. Seasons where our relationships are so life-giving, and seasons where it just feels like they're taking out all of our life. So my encouragement for you, my encouragement for me, is for us to hold on to these words. That you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And look for the good. Look for the good. In the midst of the pain, look for God's goodness. In the midst of the hurt, in the midst of the divide, in the midst of it all, look for God's goodness. Because He is a good Father. And He's with you. And He sees you. And He guides you. And He's the God who heals. Let's pray. Lord, I'm thankful for a story like Joseph's that we can learn so much from. And Lord, may we lean into you. And God, let's just trust. I pray that we'll trust that as we step through our hurt into the lives of other people, that you are going to heal not only that other person, but you're going to do a work in us and through us. Lord, may we be brave. May we be brave. In your name I pray. Amen.